It was a cold, rainy evening in downtown Los Angeles when Keanu Reeves stepped onto an old city bus. Wearing his usual black beanie and a thick jacket that hid his face from curious eyes, he had always loved taking the bus when he wanted to disappear. For a moment, to feel close to real people. Fame had given him everything, but sometimes it also took away the simple things. He liked to watch life move through fogged windows, to feel the hum of the city under his feet. This bus ride was supposed to be just another quiet escape after a long day of filming. He had a script in his backpack and a half-eaten sandwich in his pocket. As he found an empty seat near the back, his eyes caught something unusual. A man who looked far too young to have such tired eyes, holding a small baby wrapped in an old, thin blanket. They sat 2 rows ahead of him, close to the heater vent. The baby's cheeks were red and blotchy. Tiny fingers curled tight into the father's worn hoodie. The young man was barely holding himself together, his head resting on the window, staring at the dark city streets as if he wished he could vanish into them. Keanu felt something heavy in his chest, a tight pull that he had felt before when he saw someone in silent pain. He remembered his own nights sleeping on friends' couches after tragedy struck his life, how he, too, had sat in buses with nowhere to go but forward. The bus jolted to a stop and a woman carrying bags of groceries got on, glancing at the baby. With pity before moving away quickly, people always looked but never really saw. The bus driver shouted something about the next stop, but Keanu didn't hear him. His eyes stayed fixed on the young dad, who now tried to shift the baby without waking her. When the man moved, Keanu noticed the plastic grocery bag under his feet. It had diapers and 2 small cans of baby formula. No stroller, no baby bag. Just one bag and a thin blanket between the child and the cold. Keanu's single quotes as mind raced. He had done good things before, quietly, without cameras or headlines. He knew the world didn't need to know about every act of kindness, but this felt different. This wasn't a donation or a smile for a fan. This was a father and a baby alone on a city bus, drifting through the night like ghosts no one wanted to touch. The bus hit a pothole, and the baby stirred, a soft whimper escaping her lips. The father whispered SHH, SHH, rocking her gently, while biting his lip to keep from crying. Keanu's heart broke at that sound. The sound of a parent fighting despair for the sake of a child who didn't even know yet what the world could be. He leaned forward, trying to see the father's face better. He saw fear there, a kind of deep exhaustion that only comes from carrying a burden you cannot put down. There was also love, raw and desperate love, for the tiny life in his arms. Keanu knew that look. He had seen it in the mirror when he lost his daughter, and again when he buried his partner. Grief and love were threads of the same cloth. He knew he had to do something. But what? People were always cautious of strangers offering help, especially men who had been failed so many times. The bus turned sharply, and the baby woke up with a soft cry that turned into a sharp wail. The father's eyes darted around, embarrassed, afraid of disturbing the other passengers. A man across the aisle frowned and muttered under his breath about crying babies. Someone else put on headphones. Keanu stood up slowly, pulling the sandwich from his pocket. He moved to the seat across from the young man and offered a warm, gentle smile. The father looked up, startled, then quickly looked down again. "Hey," Keanu said softly, his voice carrying calm warmth. "Is she hungry?" The man blinked, surprised that someone had spoken to him kindly. He looked at the sandwich, then at his baby, then back at Keanu. She's okay," he whispered, his voice hoarse. I'm just trying to get her home, You have far to go?" Keanu asked, careful not to push too hard. The man shrugged. "The shelter's full tonight. I don't know." Keanu felt the pull grow stronger inside him, an unshakable feeling that he was supposed to be on this bus at this very moment. He sat down and unwrapped the sandwich, breaking it in half. He held out one piece. "Here, please, you need to eat, too." The father hesitated, glancing around as if waiting for someone to laugh at him. When no one did, he took the sandwich with shaking hands. His eyes watered as he brought it to his mouth, taking small bites as the baby settled again against his chest. "What's her name?" Keanu asked. "Emma," the father whispered. "She's 6 months. Emma is beautiful," Keanu said, his eyes softening as he looked at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. "And you're doing amazing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are." The father's lips trembled. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. It's been a bad week." "You don't have to be sorry," Keanu said firmly. "We all have weeks like that. Some just last longer than others." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, the number for a trusted local shelter he had helped fund quietly years ago. He slipped it into the father's coat pocket. "Call them. Tell them Keanu sent you," he said. "But first, let me help you tonight. Do you have somewhere safe to sleep?" The father looked down, shame flooding his face. "The bus driver said we can ride for a while. After that, I don't know." Keanu nodded slowly. "Okay. Then tonight, you don't ride this bus all night. Tonight you're coming with me. If that's okay with you." The father's eyes widened. "Why would you do that?" Keanu leaned back, feeling the familiar ache in his chest where old wounds still lived. "Because someone once did the same for me. And because I think maybe you're supposed to have a little help right now." The father stared at him, a stranger on a bus offering warmth when the world had offered only cold. Behind them, the city rolled on, rain tapping softly against the windows like a heartbeat. Keanu reached into his backpack and pulled out an old scarf, handing it over to wrap the baby better. As the bus rumbled toward the next stop, a tiny seed of hope took root between two broken souls, a seed that would grow into something that would change not just one life, but many. But neither of them knew that yet. They only knew that for this moment, on a cold bus in the middle of the city, they were not alone anymore. The bus shuddered as it pulled into the next stop, brakes hissing like a tired sigh outside. The rain had turned to a steady drizzle that painted the streets in reflections of neon signs and streetlights. Keanu stood up first, adjusting the strap of his backpack over his shoulder, then turned to the young father who still clutched baby Emma close against his chest. "Come on," Keanu said gently, nodding toward the door. The young man hesitated, looking around as if waiting for someone to stop him. No one cared. The few people still riding the bus stared into their phones or out the rain-speckled windows. With a shaky breath, the father rose, careful not to wake the baby again. As they stepped off the bus, the cold air hit them like a slap. The father shivered, tugging the thin blanket tighter around Emma. Keanu slipped his jacket off without a word and draped it over the man's shoulders. The father started to protest, but Keanu raised a hand. "Don't worry about it," he said, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I've got plenty of jackets." The young dad managed a weak smile back, though his eyes were glassy, filled with the kind of exhaustion that sleep alone can't cure. They walked together down the damp sidewalk, Keanu leading them away from the bus stop toward a small parking lot, where his old black sedan waited. He loved this car, not because it was fancy, it wasn't, but because it reminded him of who he was before the money and fame. He unlocked the doors and opened the back seat. "Go ahead," he said. "Get her in there where it's warm." The young man settled into the back seat, cradling Emma carefully. Keanu pulled a soft blanket from the trunk he always kept, one there in case of emergencies, and tucked it around the baby's tiny body. Her breath came in soft puffs, her lashes trembling as she settled back into sleep. The sight made Keanu's chest tighten with an ache that was half pain, half a tender hope. Once they were inside, Keanu got behind the wheel and started the engine, letting the heater hum to life. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The father sat hunched forward, eyes darting around the car like he couldn't quite believe where he was. "What's your name?" Keanu asked, voice warm but calm. The young man hesitated. "Tyler," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tyler and Emma." "Nice to meet you, Tyler," Keanu said. "I'm Keanu." Tyler's eyes flickered up. For a second, recognition crossed his face, but then it vanished under the weight of his exhaustion and worry. In this moment, Keanu wasn't a famous actor. He was just a stranger with a warm car and a gentle voice. "Thank you," Tyler said suddenly, his words tumbling out like stones he'd carried for too long. Nobody's done something like this for me. Not since Emma's mom. Since his voice cracked. He looked down at his daughter, pressing his lips to her forehead. Keanu didn't push him to say more. He just nodded, understanding that some stories didn't need to be forced out in the cold. Do you have anyone else, family? Keanu asked. As he pulled the car onto the main road. Tyler shook his head. No one who can help. Her mom's family blamed me when she got sick. They said I didn't take care of her right. I lost my job because I stayed with her at the hospital. When she passed, I couldn't afford the rent. We've been staying at different shelters, but they're full tonight. They're always full. Keanu felt a surge of quiet anger. He had seen so many people fall through the cracks. Good people. People who loved their families, who wanted to work, who just needed a little break. He didn't understand why the world turned its back on them so easily. He focused back on the road, the windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. Tyler, listen to me, he said, his voice firm but kind. Tonight you're not sleeping on a bus. I've got a guest house at my place. It's warm, there's food, a shower, and a crib. You're staying there tonight. Tyler's eyes widened in the mirror. No, I can't do that. That's too much. Keanu looked at him, really looked, at the ragged coat, the hollow cheeks, the father's arm wrapped so protectively around the baby. It's not too much. He said, sometimes people need a hand. Tonight, that's me. Tomorrow, well, tomorrow we'll figure that out together. Tyler's eyes filled with tears he didn't have the strength to wipe away. He turned his face toward the window, hiding his trembling chin against Emma's blanket. For the rest of the drive, silence filled the car. Not awkward silence, but the kind that wrapped around them like a promise. When they reached Keanu's house, the gate slowly swung open. Tyler stared out the window, eyes wide as they pulled into the driveway. It wasn't a mansion like people would expect from a movie star. It was just a simple, warm home with a small garden and a porch light that glowed like a beacon in the rainy dark. Keanu parked the car and got out first, opening the back door to help Tyler. The young man stepped out, legs stiff, arms tight around Emma. Keanu led them to the side entrance where the guest house sat. It wasn't big, but it had a cozy living room, a small kitchen, a clean bathroom, and a bedroom with a crib from when his sister visited with her kids. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and fresh linen. Tyler looked around, overwhelmed. Keanu moved through the rooms, turning on lights, setting out towels, opening cabinets to show him the stocked pantry. Make yourself at home, Keanu said. Really? You're safe here. Tyler lowered himself onto the couch, cradling Emma, as if he was afraid she might vanish if he blinked. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. Keanu sat beside him, placing a hand gently on his back. You're not alone anymore. Keanu said softly, rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next. Tyler couldn't answer. He just nodded, his tears soaking into Emma's blanket as she slept, unaware that her tiny life had just shifted in ways she would never remember, but would always feel. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and the moon peeked through the clouds, casting a soft silver light through the window. For the first time in months, Tyler closed his eyes knowing his daughter was safe, warm, and loved, even if it was by a stranger with a kind heart, and a quiet promise that better days could come, even when you had given up hoping for them. The morning light slipped through the half-open curtains of the guest house. Warm and gentle after the night's cold rain, Tyler woke up on the small couch, his back stiff but his mind clearer than it had been in months. For a moment, panic grabbed him. Where was he? Where was Emma? Then he heard the soft coo of his daughter in the crib nearby, her tiny fists waving at the ceiling. He sat up, heart pounding with relief. It wasn't a dream. They weren't on the bus. They weren't outside in the rain. They were warm. They were safe. He rubbed his face with shaking hands, trying to calm the mix of gratitude and fear that made his chest ache. He stood and went to the crib. Emma's eyes lit up when she saw him. She gurgled, kicking her feet against the soft blanket. That smelled like lavender detergent, a small detail, but to Tyler it felt like a piece of normal life he hadn't seen in so long. He picked her up, pressing his cheek to her head. breathing in the scent of clean baby skin and warmth. There was a soft knock on the door before it swung open slowly. Keanu peeked in. A tray balanced in his hands, scrambled eggs, toast, and a small bowl of mashed bananas. He wore an old flannel shirt and faded jeans, looking more like a gentle neighbor than one of the world's biggest movie stars. "Good morning," Keanu said, his voice still scratchy with sleep. "Thought you two might be hungry." Tyler's eyes burned with tears he didn't want to shed. I don't know what to say," he whispered, rocking Emma gently. "You don't have to say anything," Keanu said as he set the tray down on the little table. "Just eat. Emma looks like she's ready for breakfast too." Tyler smiled, a real smile this time, small, but not weighed down by shame. He settled Emma in his lap, dipping a small spoon into the mashed bananas. She squealed happily, smearing food all over her cheeks. Keanu laughed softly and grabbed a napkin, gently wiping her face. They sat together like that, two men and a baby. An ordinary scene that felt extraordinary because of the road that had led them there. After breakfast, Keanu made coffee and they talked, their words slow but open, like a wound learning how to heal. Tyler told him more about the past year, how he and his girlfriend had been so excited when they found out about Emma. They'd worked double shifts to save for her arrival, but when Emma was 3 months old, her mother's health had suddenly declined. Hospital bills ate up every penny they had. Tyler lost his job after too many missed shifts. When she died, he didn't know how to stand up again, and every door he knocked on seemed to close before he could even explain why he was there. "You must think I'm pathetic," Tyler said, his voice low. Keanu shook his head firmly. "No, I think you're stronger than most people I know. You're still here. She's healthy. That's not weakness, Tyler. That's love." Tyler's eyes dropped to the floor. "I just want her to work again. I want her to have a chance. Then, that's what we'll do," Keanu said. He sipped his coffee and looked out the window at the garden, where the morning sun glowed on the wet grass. "I know people who don't care where you've been sleeping, just what you can do. You want to work, you'll work." Tyler's hands tightened around his coffee mug. "Why are you doing this, really?" Keanu looked at him, his eyes carrying that soft, steady sadness that seemed to live in his bones. "When I lost my family, I had nothing but friends who didn't give up on me. They didn't fix everything, but they made me believe I could stand again. So now, I try to be that person when I can. For you, for her." Emma let out a loud giggle, waving her spoon at Keanu. He grinned and reached over, letting her grab his finger. "Besides," he added, his smile widening, "she's my boss now." Tyler laughed. The sound surprised even him. It had been so long since he had felt that lightness. He looked at Keanu, really looked, and saw not a celebrity, but a man who had known the same shadows and still chose to carry a lantern for someone else. After breakfast, Keanu handed him a clean towel and pointed to the small bathroom. "Go take a hot shower. Trust me, the world looks different when you're not carrying 2 weeks of city bus on your back." Tyler nodded, embarrassed but grateful. He placed Emma in a playpen Keanu had set up in the living room, then stepped into the steamy bathroom. He let the water wash over him until his skin felt raw, as if he could scrub away the layers of worry and fear that had wrapped around him like chains. When he came out, he found a set of clean clothes folded neatly on the bed, sweatpants, and a soft t-shirt. They were a little big, but warm and dry. He dressed quickly, then scooped up Emma, who squealed in delight at his fresh smell. Keanu was outside, tending to the small garden behind the guest house. Tyler stepped out, the morning sun blinking against his eyes. He stood there for a moment, watching Keanu's careful hands planting herbs along the fence. It struck him how odd, and yet how right, this moment felt. A movie star planting basil while a homeless father held his giggling baby, breathing hope for the first time in too long. "I don't know how to repay you," Tyler said quietly. Keanu wiped dirt from his hands and turned, leaning on the small garden shovel. "You don't owe me anything, but if you really want to repay me, just don't give up. Not on her, not on yourself." Tyler nodded, his arms tightening around Emma. Her tiny hands grabbed at his chin, pulling his face close to hers. He kissed her forehead, Breathing in the sweet scent of her soft hair, Keanu straightened and dusted off his knees. "Come on," he said. "I want you to meet someone today. He runs a local garage, needs extra hands, and he doesn't care about your past. You good with cars?" Tyler's eyes widened, a flicker of hope sparking in his tired soul. "Yeah, I used to work at a shop before. I'm good with engines." Keanu smiled. "Perfect. Let's get you back on your feet." For the first time in months, Tyler didn't feel like he was walking toward another closed door. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he and Emma were stepping through one that was wide open. The sky was a soft blue that morning, streaked with clouds that promised more rain by nightfall. Keanu drove them across town in his old black sedan, the baby seat installed in the back where Emma sat gurgling, wide-eyed at the world passing by outside her window. Tyler sat in the front seat, fingers tapping his knee nervously, his clean clothes feeling strange but good against his skin. They pulled into a small auto shop tucked between an old laundromat and a corner grocery store. The sign above the garage door read Sam's Auto Works. Inside, the clang of tools and low hum of engines filled the air, the familiar smell of oil and rubber hitting Tyler like a memory from a life. Before everything fell apart, Keanu turned off the engine and looked at him. "Just be honest, Sam's a good man. He gives people chances." Tyler swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. He could see Sam already, a stocky man with grease on his overalls and gray hair sticking out from under a baseball cap. He was wiping his hands on a rag as Keanu stepped out and waved. "Sam," Keanu called. Sam turned, squinting before a wide grin spread across his face. "Well, if it isn't John Wick himself," he laughed, his voice booming across the garage. He grabbed Keanu in a quick hug, clapping him on the back. "What brings you here, Hollywood?" Keanu stepped aside, gesturing to Tyler. "This is Tyler. He's looking for work. Good with cars, good with people." Sam sized Tyler up with the same keen eyes that had seen thousands of engines and even more stories. He nodded once, then looked at Emma peeking over Tyler's shoulder. "Cute kid," Sam said. "You know how to handle a wrench?" Tyler managed a small smile. "Yes, sir. Worked on transmissions, brakes, tune-ups, anything." Sam grunted. "Good. Don't call me sir. Makes me feel old. Come on, let's see what you know." The next hour passed like a test Tyler didn't even know he was taking. Sam had him check an old sedan with a rattling noise. Tyler slid under the car, pointed out a loose heat shield, and fixed it with steady hands that remembered the work like an old friend. Grease stained his clean shirt, but he didn't care. For the first time in so long, he felt useful, not just surviving, but doing something that made sense. While Tyler worked, Keanu sat on a bench near the garage entrance, holding Emma in his lap. She played with his fingers, giggling every time he wiggled them. People passing by did double takes when they saw him, but he just nodded politely, never letting go of the baby. It was as if they were two worlds colliding. The man who had it all and the child who had nothing but was finally getting something better. When Tyler crawled out from under the car, wiping sweat from his forehead, Sam gave him a short nod of approval. "You're good," Sam said. "Not just the work, the way you look at it. You respect the machine. That's rare." Tyler's chest swelled with a pride he hadn't felt in so long it almost hurt. "Thank you," he said. "I won't let you down." Sam waved him off. "Start tomorrow morning. Pays not Hollywood money," he added, shooting Keanu a teasing grin. "But it's honest. We'll figure out childcare too. My niece helps watch kids in the back when folks need it." Tyler felt like he might collapse from relief. He turned to Keanu, who was bouncing Emma gently on his knee. Their eyes met, and Tyler didn't need to speak. Keanu just smiled, that warm, steady smile that told him he wasn't alone in this. Later that evening, back at the guest house, Tyler sat at the small kitchen table, a piece of paper in front of him, a list Keanu had helped him make. It was full of simple things: open a bank account, get Emma's birth certificate reprinted, get a small apartment close to the shop, find a daycare. Tyler felt the weight of it, but it wasn't crushing like before. It felt solid, like bricks he could stack into something strong for him and Emma. He looked up at Keanu, who was sitting across from him sipping tea. Why do you do this? Tyler asked, his voice low. Why me? There are so many people who need help. Keanu set his mug down, his eyes thoughtful and sad all at once. Because once, a stranger did the same for me. Not in the same way. But they showed me there's always someone out there who cares. I promised myself if I ever had enough to give, I'd do the same. He paused, glancing over at Emma, who was fast asleep on the couch, her thumb in her mouth. And because I've lost people too, I know what it's like to feel like the whole world moved on without you. Tyler swallowed hard. I'm scared. What if I mess this up? Keanu leaned forward, his voice firm. Then you get back up every time. That's all you can do, Tyler. That's what being her dad means. Tyler felt tears slip down his cheeks, but he didn't wipe them away. They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need words to feel safe. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the branches of the trees. In here, the air felt warm, filled with something he hadn't dared to name until now, hope. By midnight, Tyler had tucked Emma into the crib and was about to lie down on the couch when Keanu knocked on the door again, this time holding a small envelope. One more thing, Keanu said, handing it to him. Inside was a bus pass, a grocery card, and a little cash, enough to get through the week. Tyler's eyes widened. Keanu, I can't. It's not charity. Keanu interrupted gently. It's a loan if you want. Pay it forward when you can. Not just the money, the kindness. Tyler clutched the envelope to his chest, his voice breaking as he whispered, I will. Keanu rested a hand on his shoulder. Good night, Tyler. Tomorrow's the first step. As Keanu left, Tyler stood at the window for a long time, watching the porch light flicker in the wind. Behind him, Emma stirred in her sleep, and he knew, really knew, that maybe they weren't lost anymore. And though he didn't have all the answers, he finally believed that maybe, just maybe, better days were waiting for them on the other side of this storm. The days turned into a week, and the weeks slipped into two. Each morning, Tyler woke up before the sun, careful not to disturb Emma as he dressed quietly in the guest house. He'd watch her sleep for a moment, her tiny hands curled near her cheeks, her breath soft and warm, and whisper a promise that today would be better than yesterday. He'd walk across the garden, where dew clung to the grass, and slip into the main house for coffee with Keanu. They'd sit at the small kitchen table while the city outside was still asleep. Sometimes they talked about nothing, old movies, music, the best breakfast sandwiches in L.A. And sometimes they talked about everything, loss, mistakes, second chances, and how the world could be so cruel and so kind at the same time. Keanu never lectured him, never made him feel small. He just listened and offered gentle nudges when Tyler needed them. When Tyler's shoulders slumped under the weight of his worries, paperwork, finding a daycare, calling social services to fix Emma's records, Keanu would say, one step at a time. Just take the next step. At the garage, Tyler worked hard, harder than he ever had before. He learned the rhythm of Sam's shop, the way the old man liked things done, with care, not speed, with respect for the machines and the people driving them. Some days, he stayed late, wiping oil from his hands long after the sun dipped below the rooftops. When he came home, his hands were cracked and stained, but his heart felt a little stronger. Emma started to blossom too, with a warm place to sleep, and a belly always full. She began to giggle more, her cheeks round and rosy again. The other mechanics loved her. When Tyler brought her by the shop, they'd make funny faces and sneak her little stuffed animals. She babbled nonsense that made them all laugh, reminding these men with tough hands and tired backs why they did what they did. One Friday night, after a long day under a car that refused to behave, Tyler came home to find Keanu sitting on the porch steps, a small box in his hands. The evening was cool, the sky painted in soft pinks and golds. Emma was in Tyler's arms, yawning, ready for bed. Keanu stood up and handed him the box. Got you something, he said, almost shyly. Inside was a small, simple phone. Tyler blinked. Keanu, I can't take this. You need a way for Sam to reach you. Keanu interrupted. And for daycare calls, doctor's appointments. You're doing this on your own now. You need tools. Tyler's throat tightened. He nodded, words stuck behind the lump swelling in his chest. "Thank you," he croaked. I don't know what I'd do without you." Keanu's eyes were gentle but serious. "You'd figure it out," he said. "You're stronger than you think, Tyler. I'm just giving you a boost, that's all." Tyler sat down on the porch. Cradling Emma on his lap, they watched the sky darken together, the quiet hum of the neighborhood settling around them. It felt peaceful, almost ordinary, but to Tyler, it was extraordinary. No fear of the shelter closing its doors, no bus rides with strangers, no counting coins for a can of formula, just a warm porch, his daughter giggling at fireflies, and a friend who'd become something like family. Saturday came, and with it, another small step forward. Keanu drove Tyler and Emma to see an apartment a few blocks from the garage. It was nothing fancy. A tiny one-bedroom with creaky floors and windows that stuck when you tried to open them, but it was dry, clean, and close to work. Tyler walked through it with wide eyes, his hands brushing the walls as if to be sure they were real. Emma crawled around the living room, squealing when she found a patch of sunlight on the carpet. Tyler scooped her up, kissing her chubby cheek. As he looked at Keanu, "It's small," he said, half-apologetic. Keanu laughed. "Small is perfect. Less to clean." Tyler smiled. "I can afford this," he said softly, almost to himself. "I mean, I will be able to." "Soon, yes, you can," Keanu said. "This is your place, your home, your fresh start." The landlord, an older woman with kind eyes, handed Tyler the key after checking his paperwork. She didn't ask too many questions, didn't flinch at his thin rental history. Maybe she saw what Keanu saw, a man trying, really trying, to build something solid out of the ashes of what he'd lost when they left. Tyler pressed the key into his palm so tight it left a mark. In the car, he looked over at Emma in her car seat, her eyes fluttering closed in sleep, her tiny fists clutching her blanket. "She's never going to remember that bus," Tyler said suddenly, voice shaking. "She'll never know how cold it got, how scared I was that I'd lose her to the streets." Keanu's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "That's the point, Tyler. She won't remember the worst nights, but she'll always feel how much you fought for her. That night, back at the guest house for what would be one of their last nights there." Tyler stayed awake long after Emma had fallen asleep. He sat at the table with Keanu, the box of leftover pizza open between them. They talked about the future, about small things like which park Emma might like best, which grocery store had the cheapest diapers. Finally, Tyler looked at Keanu, his eyes red but clear. "When this happened, when she was born and we lost her mom, I thought God hated me. I thought maybe I deserved it." Keanu's face softened with the kind of understanding only someone who's lived through deep grief can have. "Life doesn't hate you, Tyler. Sometimes it just breaks you open, and then you find out what's inside." Tyler's lip trembled. "What if I mess this up again?" Keanu reached across the table, squeezing his shoulder. "Then you try. Again, you don't quit. That's what makes you different from the ones who really lose." Outside, the wind rattled the branches against the window, but inside, Tyler felt something he hadn't dared to feel in so long, that he wasn't alone anymore. That even when he stepped into his new apartment, closing the door behind him, he'd carry this kindness with him, like a lantern to light the dark places ahead. Emma stirred in her sleep and made a small, soft noise. Tyler rose, scooping her up in his arms. He held her close, breathing in her warmth, her innocence, her promise that tomorrow might just be okay. And in the corner of the guest house kitchen, Keanu leaned back, watching them with a quiet smile. The kind of smile that said, "This is why we help each other. This is what makes all the pain worth it." The morning that Tyler and Emma moved into their tiny new apartment, the sun was bright and soft at the same time, like the world itself was trying to tell them this is a good day. They stood on the cracked sidewalk while Keanu loaded the last of the boxes from the guest house into the back of his old sedan. The boxes weren't heavy, just a few clothes, Emma's toys, some pots and pans Keanu had insisted he take, but to Tyler, they felt like bricks of hope stacked neatly inside cardboard. Emma giggled on the grass beside the building, chasing a fallen leaf that the wind kept teasing out of her reach. Her cheeks were rosy again, her laugh bright and clear. She had no idea how close they'd come to sleeping on a bus bench again. No idea how easily her father's fear could have become her life. When they carried the boxes up the narrow stairs, Tyler felt his shoulders burning, not from the weight of the boxes, but from the memory of the weight he'd carried in his heart for so long. Now, every step up felt like a step away from the cold nights, from the hunger, from the bus that never took them anywhere, but in circles inside. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility. The walls were bare, the carpet older than Tyler, but to him, it was beautiful. It was theirs. It was safe. Keanu stood in the middle of the tiny living room, hands in his pockets, looking around like he was imagining it full of life, full of the messes and laughter that made a place, a home. Not bad, huh? He said with a grin. Tyler laughed, his eyes shining. It's perfect. They spent the afternoon setting up the crib and the small second-hand dresser Keanu had found online. They hung a mobile of tiny stars above Emma's bed. Tyler set her down on the floor and watched as she crawled from corner to corner, her eyes wide with curiosity. He knew she wouldn't remember this day, but he would. He'd remember every sound, the creak of the door, the echo of her laughter, bouncing off the walls, the steady heartbeat of hope that seemed to pulse through every inch of the small space. Around dusk, they sat on the floor together, eating cheap takeout from cartons. Emma clapped her hands at every bite, a little queen. At her feast, Tyler caught Keanu watching her with that same soft, distant sadness in his eyes, the same look he'd seen the first night on the bus. Tyler leaned back against the wall, his heart full to bursting. Do you ever think, he asked quietly, that maybe all of this was supposed to happen, like maybe you were meant to be on that bus that night? Keanu looked down at his noodles, his smile small but honest. I don't know if things happen for a reason. I think sometimes we get a chance to make something good out of the mess, not fix it all, not erase the bad parts, just plant something good in the middle of it. Emma reached for Keanu's chopsticks and squealed when he let her hold them. She waved them like magic wands, and for a moment, it did feel like magic, that a stranger could become family, that a night on a bus could turn into this tiny apartment filled with takeout and laughter. When dinner was done, Keanu stood to leave. Tyler walked him to the door, holding Emma on his hip. He felt that same ache in his chest, the one that comes when you're about to say goodbye to someone who saved you in ways you can't ever repay. You sure you don't want to stay? Tyler asked, half joking, half hoping. Keanu chuckled. I think you do have got this. Besides, he added, gently ruffling Emma's hair, I'll be around. I'm not going anywhere. Tyler's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother to hide. He shifted Emma so he could pull Keanu into a hug, the kind of hug that says thank you for every unspoken thing. I'll never forget this, Tyler whispered. Keanu pulled back, his hands resting on Tyler's shoulders. Don't remember me, he said. Remember what you did. You kept fighting. You didn't give up on her. Emma babbled and tugged Keanu's sleeve, her tiny voice saying goodbye in the only language she knew. Keanu kissed her forehead and stepped back into the hallway. He paused, looked at them one last time, this young father and his baby, standing together at the door of a life that wasn't perfect, but was theirs. Take care of each other, Keanu said softly. We will, Tyler promised. The door closed gently behind him, but the warmth stayed. Tyler turned back to the living room, his eyes tracing the shadows cast by the streetlight. Outside, he set Emma on her blanket and watched her play with the plastic spoons she'd found in the takeout bag. He thought about all the nights he'd been too afraid to dream. Tonight, for the first time, he let himself imagine tomorrow, a tomorrow where he'd wake up, walk to work, come home to her giggles, her sticky baby kisses, her sleepy sighs. And maybe one day, when Emma was old enough to understand, he'd tell her about the night a stranger sat across from him on a bus, a stranger who saw him when nobody else did, who gave him more than money or shelter. He'd tell her how that kindness didn't just save them from the cold, it gave them back their future. Outside, Keanu walked down the steps and paused under the streetlight. He looked up at the window where a soft glow shone through. He smiled. The tired, peaceful smile of a man who knew how precious hope was because he'd lost it once too. And in that tiny apartment above him, a young father whispered to his baby girl as she drifted to sleep, "It's gonna be okay, Emma. It's really gonna be okay." And this time, he believed it.